Welcome to Gurus on the Spot, bringing you nuggets of well-being from the Indian wisdom traditions. I'm VENA RAMPHAL, classical Indian dancer and spiritual coach. There we are. Perfect. Wonderful. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for coming on to Gurus on the Spot, Padma. It's so lovely to see you. It's been a long time.
It's so nice for me to see you, my dear. It's very, very long. I haven't seen you. Though you sent your dance to me, you still dance so beautifully. Keep it up.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to ask you first of all about Jatayu Moksham, because this, of course, I think is one of your most famous choreographies. And you set Jatayu Moksham to Tchaikovsky, the overture of Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet. So could you tell us about the moment when that idea presented itself to you? Where were you? What were you doing?
Well, every year I go to Coimbatore, Arya Vaidya Chikitsalaya. It's a Ayurveda hospital. And 30 years back, I had an accident. From that time, it was Swami Chinmayananda who took me there. I had Ayurveda treatment for that. And that was so helpful. I thought you don't have to be sick to take Ayurveda treatment. It is something which rejuvenates you. So every year for 21 days, I go to Coimbatore. And I was there, and the doctors don't let me dance at that time. You can't exercise. You can't even read. You can listen to music. Not too much of television also, because they do what is called dara. It's a kind of a treatment when oil drips on your head for 1 hour. So these are all restrictions, and there's definite diet restriction also. So you're allowed to listen to music. I was a student of Western music. I took a lot of good music just to hear, and not only Indian music, but I took Western music also. I'm particularly fond of Tchaikovsky. I was lying. Another rule is you should lie down but not sleep in the afternoon. Right. It's so difficult, after the nice oil massage all over the body, you feel like sleeping. To keep me awake, I always used to listen to some good music. And it was Tchaikovsky's, this particular music which I was listening. I wasn't straining my brain. I didn't think of it at all. To be very honest with you, I don't want to pose as though I went to a separate place in Mahabalipuram, meditated, and I got this idea. All that is nonsense. I was just lying down, listening, and the whole choreography came to my mind. I saw the whole dance in my mind as I was listening to the music. So it flowed so well. I think it was God's grace. It had to happen. And I was thinking how very well the movement is synchronizing with moods, both music and mood. Every musical phrase was synchronizing with the mood of the theme that was coming to my mind, Jatayu Moksham. And after the whole thing was finished, I was thinking how I wish I can present this in Moscow. It was a flash of thought. And you won't believe, next week, I got the invitation from Government of India to go to Moscow for the Festival of India. And I presented it there. And it echoed in other parts of the world. I presented it everywhere. And the Russian press wrote that it looked as though Tchaikovsky and anticipated Padma's choreography 75 years ago.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. After the audience left the hall. So what happened then? Something very particular happened then on the stage. Can you share that?
Well, we're talking about that experience that was not in Moscow. That was it was in another. It was in Russia, but it was in another place. First time I performed was in Moscow in Tchaikovsky Hall.
Right.
Philharmonic Hall. And the second time when I was doing this, it was in Donetsk, down south, but still in Soviet Union only. And there it was again Philharmonic Hall. And when I was dancing, it was a mystic experience. I felt that there was something behind me, behind the screen, which is making me dance. It was a very strange experience. So after the curtain call was over, the director of the Philharmonic was backstage and all the formalities were happening. I asked him, what do you have behind this curtain? I have a feeling that there is something which is drawing me there. He smiled and said, it is the organ which Tchaikovsky used to play.
Incredible.
I was so moved. I asked them to remove the curtain. The audience had left. I asked them to remove the curtain, asked them to play the music once again, at least the last part of it. And close to the organ, I danced again.
Amazing. That's incredible. I mean, when we hear this whole episode from the time you were at the Ayurvedic retreat, having your massage and listening to the music, it feels like you, at that moment, you accessed a higher dimension, a dimension of Shakti that is not normally available to us. And this just flowed through.
Absolutely right. And that's why I feel it's not my work. It's work of some higher force with the blessing of the composer.
Yes.
With the blessing of the composer. I always say that whenever I take a subject, it can be Valmiki Ramayanam or Shakuntalam, whatever it is, I try to go into the psyche of the poet.
Okay.
I like to peep into his mind.
Yes.
Try to understand that, emulate that kind of a psychic level, and then bring out that for the audience. And this time, there was no lyrics, it was music.
Yes.
But subject came from Rama.
So this brings me to the Karanas and to the impact of classical Indian dance on the body of the dancer. Because I remember that when I was with you for the first time for that year, 91 to 92, studying with you, I remember distinctly you speaking about Anga Shuddha and Anga Saushtava. And somehow those words in particular really landed like a seed, like a seed. They were planted in me. And I've never forgotten that. And later on, it was my practice of Kriya Yoga, I think, that nurtured and watered that seed, because I started to notice and become aware of the subtler movement of energy in my system as I was dancing. I noticed that the dance has a very distinct impact on the brain waves, on the central nervous system. It really takes you into a yogic state, a yogic kind of environment. So with that in mind, it's occurred to me recently that the sequence of the 108 Karanas, I feel intuitively that there is some yogic significance to that, some spiritual significance to that. Even if we think about the first Talapushpaputam, that first label, the first name, all the way through to the Gangavataranam, there's right there, there's a yogic journey, there's a very clear journey. So could you speak to us about your experience? What is it that the Karanas offer to the practitioner from a spiritual perspective?
Well, Veena, it was, I think, 1962 when I started my research on Karanas. And I think I was ordained to do it again because before that, I used to wonder whenever I went to Chidambaram temple, I used to wonder, looking at the Karana sculptures there in the Gopuram, I would be, I'll go mad sitting there day gazing at the whole thing. And it was really, what should I say? I was so passionate. It was I had a psychic relationship with the sculptures. I don't know how to explain that. And even when I first went to Tanjavur temple, I was hardly 17 at that time. I didn't know anything about Karanas. And it was late in the night. Those days, Tanjavur temple used to be so dark. People were not coming there regularly. And my father took me, my group we were going somewhere else. But it happened to be, the van that we were traveling broke down at Tanjavur. So it was taking time for getting it repaired. By the time it was about 8:30 in the night. And my father said, let's all go to the temple. So we went to the temple. It was pitch dark. And you know how huge, it is like Vishwarupa.
Yeah.
Ishvara there is like Vishwarupa. And I go there, Veena, every time I went there, I anticipated that this should be there. I'm going to come across something else here. It was like, I've never spoken about this anywhere because you were talking about your experience. It's my duty to record somewhere at some point of my life. I thought I should share this with you. I felt I knew the place. I was familiar with the place, but I had never visited Tanjavur, though I belong to the district. And I felt there was more, and something again, like Tchaikovsky's organ. That was much later, something drew me. And then I came out, I had darshan and came out. But then this was going on in my memory till I met Dr. T.N. Ramachandran, my research guide. He had come back from Delhi, retired as Joint Director General of Archaeological Survey of India. And it was he who identified the Karanas in Tanjavur as belonging to Natyashastra, 4th chapter. And my meeting him was again, it was a God's wish, I think, because my brother, Baluna, you remember, Balakrishnan was doing documentary film on temples and festivals of Tamil Nadu. And he was trying to get the guidance of Dr. T.N. Ramachandran. And that time he was in Delhi and we couldn't approach him. And I was asked by my father to read all the Indological books for my brother because my brother was down with typhoid. So he couldn't read. So at the bedside, my father said, you read the books for him. So I started reading. I wasn't sure what I wanted, but I knew there was something that I'm looking for. Every time I went to Chidambaram temple, I used to go to Chidambaram more often because it's on the way to my ancestral village. So we used to go regularly. But then what is that I was looking for? I didn't know. And then when I read those books, a new vista opened before me. And I had the greatest blessing, I would say, to meet Dr. T.N. Ramchandran. And then everything changed. I came under his guidance. He spoke about the Karanas in Tanjavur, and that made sense to me, having gone there long ago. And then the rest is history. And I don't know for how many hours I've stood, particularly in that passage on the first tier of Tanjavur Vimana, gazing at the sculptures. I'm telling you, every Karana sculpture there moved for me. I didn't feel they were static. They all moved. It was like I would only say like Dakshinamurti, teaching in silence. These Karana sculptures of Shiva, all in stone for others' eyes, were in flesh and blood for me. They moved. And it was like juxtaposing my soul on the sculptures. I could see that there is so much movement. And I could easily find out that the four hands were meant for showing animation. And everybody was copying the dance sculptures in the static form.
Yes.
Those days, even scholars used to write about Karanas as Karana poses. It had occurred to me that each Karana is like a still photograph of a moving dancer. There is a movement to precede and something to follow. So the sculpture is nothing but a frozen moment of a movement. This is how it occurred. Once this discovery was there, then my approach to Karanas was completely different.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to really appreciate the hours and the days and the weeks and the deep, I mean, that was a sadhana, really, that ongoing sadhana. In many ways, that's been the sadhana of your life, dedicated to that. And I want to emphasize that, particularly for today's audience, where we get so much data so quickly, and people want things very, very fast. And I think it's extremely important to emphasize that the reason why you were able to access this depth of knowledge, and the reason why years later Tchaikovsky was able to speak to you, was because you allowed yourself to be soaked in the vidya, in the knowledge. You became open and available to it. And for me, this is one of the great blessings of the tradition, that we have this understanding of being able to receive.
Veena, there's one more thing I want to tell you about the Karanas. I'm very happy. More than 50 dancers have learned already in a proper way. And very often for our Bharatiya Nat Shastra telefilm serial, we were practicing together. It takes about 40 minutes to perform from Talapushpaputam to the 108th Karana, non-stop. You know how every anga, every upanga is used in every Karana. So it is not like the technique of the Adavu, where it is steps oriented. It is movement of the whole body.
Yes.
And the greatest discovery that we as practicing dancers felt was, after performing all through 40 minutes, at the end, you would have a feeling of soaring high, flying. there'll be no feeling of any pain in any part of the body. The whole body is energized, and mentally you are energized, spiritually you are energized. This is, as you are practicing Kriya Yoga, you can understand this.
Yes. Yes.
It happens. It happens. There's something special about these Marga movements. After all, it is said Shiva taught these to Tandu, and Tandu taught this to Bharatamuni. And there is a tradition. There is a very deep religious traditional value to the entire concept. Otherwise, it won't give you this efficacy. No wonder dance was introduced into the temples, because good dance can bring prosperity and well-being for the society. And opposite of that, if you have very bad dance, we can have the opposite effect also. So we have to be careful. We have a responsibility to see that we move in such a manner that it helps, even without an awareness about it, it helps the well-being of the society.
Yes.
It's a kind of Vāstu.
Yes.
I call it the Vāstu of dance.
Yes. Absolutely.
Because if in Vāstu Shastra, if an image is not sculpted according to what is called Talamana and Pramana, the measurements based on symmetry and proportion, the Vastu Shastra says that image, that idol, can cause conflict, disease, and death in society.
I think
you extend.
is,
If you dance out of proportion, out of tala, out of Angashuddha, it can equally be bad for the society. So after performing 108 Karanas, you feel absolutely rejuvenated.
Yes. Then it's definitely a yogic practice. So I have just one more quick question, which is that I feel like I'm constantly exploring, constantly beginning, like I know absolutely nothing in a way. I feel like I'm just reaching into this extraordinary knowledge. Is there something, what can I do? How can I take forward my kind of pull to the spiritual content and capacity of the Karanas?
You're already doing very well. Just continue. Sadhana, sadhana, and sadhana. You're always welcome. But seeing that little bit that you had performed, I can tell you, it's very beautiful. You can't go wrong.
Thank you.